getting you through the mornings.
Hey Mike, if you go on to win the Super Bowl, will you in fact dismember your penis?
Marsh and Mello.
Mike O'Shea, would you be willing, if you win the Grey Cup, to get rid of, your pecker? Welcome back. It is Marsh and Mello right here for you in Canadian Football Perspective. If you are watching us at all here on the show, you can see that I've got a snazzy new golf shirt on, the black golf shirt with the CFP logo on it. That is courtesy of our new friends, Area 51 Sports Apparel. They're the newest player in the Canadian team sports uniform and equipment industry, locally and minority owned. Area 51 Sports' goal is to provide high quality uniforms, apparel, and equipment at affordable prices. Area 51 Sports offers uniforms and equipment for all sports at remarkable prices. You can check them out on Instagram at Area 51. That's the numbers 5 and 1 at Area 51 Sport, or reach out to them via email at area51sportsapparel@gmail.com. The first thing I thought when I put this golf shirt on, Kyle, was this feels like Sawdust City Beers on a golf course kind of golf shirt. It is light. It feels like you get the wind going through it on a beautiful day. You get out there, and beautiful to be able to rep CFP here. We're going to be sending some of these golf shirts out to our listeners as well as part of our Sawdust City Tweets of the Week, which will be doing those leading up to the Canadian Football League season. But great to have Area 51 Sport on with us here. When I say the name Darren Flutie, what comes to mind for one Kyle Melo?
Ooh, the story of a guy who, if the CFL didn't exist, wouldn't have been anything in terms of football, right? Never played in the NFL, or at least made his name in the NFL. Came to Canada, an unknown, and became a Hamilton legend. Like, those are the stories that live in the CFL across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to my conversation with the one and only Darren Flutie. I didn't have him on just because I posted a picture this week of him using masking tape as his football belt on my Twitter account, which I tweeted at Mike Morreale. I said, is he just using packing tape as his belt, or did the Ticats have clear belts at some point? Because I was like, that would be extremely 90s if they went clear belts on the uniforms. And Morreale said, nope, that's just tape, and it's the same belt that Flutie wore out to the bar after the game. So here is Darren Flutie in his own words talking about all things Jake Burt and his excitement to have another Boston College Eagle representing the Hamilton Tiger Cats. What excites you? Because I know from even just a couple of texts that we shared back and forth, you're pretty jacked up about this. You think that Jake has an incredible chance to do something special in front of him here. What about Jake's opportunity in the CFL and specifically in Hamilton has you excited because you know the league and you know what he's about to head into?
I think I first got excited when I heard Troy was talking to me, my son Troy, that he is Canadian and he could get drafted in the Canadian Football League. And I was thinking, how great would that be? And someone said he was from Regina. And I'm thinking, oh, geez, maybe he'll go to Saskatchewan. I didn't know who was drafting first this year or anything. But I got really excited when I heard the Ticats drafted him because there's a direct connection. I remember talking to him and his parents about the CFL and some of my experiences and playing up there and what it meant to me and my family. And then he ends up being drafted first overall, which is awesome. But not only that, but going to Hamilton, playing in Hamilton where I played. So I know what he's going to go through.
Yeah, no doubt. And that was, that idea of kind of happenstance of you talking to him, you having some of the favorite years of your career in Hamilton and him going to Hamilton. When you first got word that he had gone to Hamilton, I'm sure that you probably just chuckled and then you probably went, this is ridiculous. No?
The irony was crazy. Because I just recently really started to put it all together. Because they had another tight end, right, with BC that went to the NFL. And then Jake started with the Patriots as a free agent. So I still heard his name. He was on the practice squad here in New England. But then the draft was coming up. And the first thing I thought about when he got drafted was, geez, I hope he doesn't wear number 82. I don't want anyone wearing my number. But I guess a BC guy wearing it wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, and I would say also that the jerseys look significantly different enough now, as you know, that there isn't the massive third logo on the shoulder pads or anything like that. I still see the Flutie 82s around, and it's very easy to tell when it's from that late 90s era.
Yeah, I know it looks so dated, right? Because I remember growing up and playing high school, college, CFL, NFL, and I looked at jerseys from maybe the 60s and I was like, wow, look at those look so old. And now when people look at the jersey I wore, that's what they think of. But it's funny, I sent his parents a picture of me in my Tie Cat uniform, probably in 98 or 99. And it just looks so dated and so way back when, but that's the way it was.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now you've seen his game. Obviously, you know kind of what he's about, and the tight end position in the modern CFL doesn't really exist. But there's this evolution happening right now, right? Of these kind of hybrid tight end receivers, these inside slot backs, and it's kind of like in basketball, how Giannis is damn near 7 feet tall shooting threes, right? You're just getting these stretchy guys who are bigger and faster and all the rest, and they're doing things that smaller guys like yourself used to do. And I'm wondering, where do you think Jake slots in terms of his skill set and how it applies to the CFL today?
That's a great question, because I was thinking that also. He's a tight end coming from college and he's going to the Canadian Football League, where I think of running start and I'm not a big guy. I wasn't involved in the blocking schemes, and a lot of the slot backs when I played, we didn't block a lot. But I thought of Ray Elgard when I first thought of Jake being drafted. When I was coming up in the Canadian Football League, Ray Elgard was the guy, but he was this big guy that used his strength and kind of size to get off press and then also to get up and outreach people for the ball. I think Jake kind of has that in him, that route running ability, but also the size that, an outside linebacker or defensive back can't come out and really press him that well, because he's going to just outmuscle him. And then if he runs good routes like he does and he has good hands, he can just reach and get that wingspan and catch the ball.
And the other thing that I thought kind of jumped out to me was his size and his length, but they already have a big body tight end who's a true tight end, Nikola Kalinic right now, who's 6'5", 255. And it's almost like he's found this sweet spot between being, a big body, a little bit lighter, maybe Fantus type player that they ask him to slim down to 230, 235, and having to be that big monster. I mean, he's found this really interesting niche just based on the roster that he's gone to.
Yeah, I think that was one of the first things I kind of said to Jake through Instagram. I was like, think about leaning yourself up, right? You already got the size, but lean yourself up and try to be a little quicker and faster. You'll still be a good blocker, but that hybrid that you're talking about, I mean, that's what I always wanted to be. I would have loved to have been like 6'2" and 195, not the big muscle guy, but lean enough that you had the speed and quickness, but big enough to be able to make plays and still be able to block and break tackles. And like you said, he's that hybrid. So they could use the big tight ends and they could go double tight ends and maybe pound it, but he can also get out in the pass routes and make a difference that way.
I've heard that from a lot of guys that have played in the league, where they just say, just when you're in preparation for getting into the league, whether it's NFL free agents coming up or otherwise, just run and keep running and then run some more, because it's a lot of guys in their first year in the league, they come up and they go, oh my God, I can't believe how much you have to run. They come back in their second year and they're like, now I get it. Now I've prepped for this style, for the amount of running and the play clock and everything else.
Again, it's a great point. And obviously you've been talking to players, because that was the evolution of kind of the position, both being a receiver and being a tight end. Your first thought when you're going to an NFL or CFL team is, I got to get bigger, right? These guys are the best athletes in the world. I got to get bigger and stronger, and I got to compete with them. When in reality, you really have, even myself, I have to get leaner, faster, quicker, so I can get away from them so they can't hit me and hurt me. It's a good point.
Did you know how much yourself, Troy, and the stories about Doug actually had an influence on him? You talk about hanging out with Jake's parents and talking about Canada, But when I talked to him, you were one of the first people that came out of his mouth where he went, yeah, like, I mentioned to my grandma who still lives in Saskatchewan about the Fluties, and oh my goodness, they're gods in the CFL. And he goes, really? He goes, they're just like, Darren's just kind of like my friend's dad, right? But he starts hearing these stories and it makes it real to him. And it's obvious to me it had a really big impact on him. But did you know that you were having that impact?
No, I never feel that way. I've never, I've always been grounded here because every offseason I come back to home in Boston. We live in Natick, Massachusetts, but I always say Boston. And they really don't, my friends and the people we hang with here, they haven't seen a lot of my games. Maybe a few when ESPN2 or whoever was covering it. they just, or they came up for the odd game, but they don't get it. It's just, when I played, it meant so much to all of us, whether I was in British Columbia or Edmonton, but especially in Hamilton. It was just such a tight-knit group. And Doug says this all the time, and I would have to agree with him. Like, he could be playing a baseball game in an over 50 league. And to him, it's like playing in the Grey Cup. It's just, if you're competing, and that's the way we felt in Canada, it was the biggest thing in the world, and it still is. I'm sure it is for Jake. It's just the difference between talking to someone who's from Canada and knows what you did, and then coming back home and talking to someone that has no clue.
Yeah, you guys are competitionaholics. I've heard and I've listened to all the Doug stories, and I know I've heard Jake talk about wanting to go to Canada because of the competition level as well. So I don't know if that's a BC thing that gets ingrained, if that's a Boston thing or whatever, but that's certainly something that's rubbed off on him for sure. You mentioned especially Hamilton there as kind of part of your career journey, 98 to 02. And again, when I talked to Jake, he said to me that a lot of the stories that he had heard through Troy were through Hamilton. And obviously you win the Grey Cup 94 with BC, also 99 with Hamilton. But the back end of your career, why did Hamilton mean so much to you, to the point where I'm talking to Jake Burt, and the first thing he says is, "Oh, those Hamilton stories and the times that Troy had this, vague reminiscence moments about what happened in Hamilton with his dad."
Hamilton was unique in so many ways. I mean, first thing was that it was closest to home, so it was so much more convenient for my family and my wife. We could go back and forth. But the people that played on that team, Coach Lancaster, the fans in Hamilton. And I mean, wherever you went in Hamilton, they knew who you were. But it was, Hamilton's a tough city. It was like, I don't know, I guess you could equate it to Pittsburgh or the way that was in the 70s, in the States. It was just a great place to play. I think it was the teammates most of all, and the coach I had, Coach Lancaster. But the fans supported us so much. I mean, you could hang out there after a game, after a big game, and you would sign autographs for 2 hours. They wouldn't leave. They would just stay and stay and stay. You had to break away. And that doesn't happen in every city in the Canadian Football League. But the group of players I played with, like I was talking to Orlando Steinhauer, I think today or yesterday. We were going back and forth, either texting or emailing. And we were talking about Jake and everything. But what made Hamilton so special for me when we went there and won, back to the beginning of what you were talking about, was that they were 1-17 the year before, 0-18. I forget what they were, but they were considered the worst team in the league. And then I went there as kind of a package with Danny McManus and Coach Lancaster. So it felt a lot of pressure, like, wow, we got to get there. They had a great defense, in 96, 97, but they couldn't do anything offensively. So we felt a lot of pressure that we had to do well offensively. And sure enough, we played well offensively, and the defense was great. I mean, around the league, everyone said Hamilton was a good football team through 96, 97. They just didn't win football games.
Right. Yeah. And then you go there.
Long
And
answer, but
No. And then you end up producing. And obviously we saw what happened with Danny being up around the top of the league, or tops the league in 98, 99 and winning in 99. And well, he should have run it back in 2000 if all things were kind of right at that point as well with the group that you guys had. But this might be two different answers. But what's the best piece of advice that you can give Jake for living in Hamilton? And what's the best piece of advice that you can give Jake for playing in Hamilton?
Well, when we were in Hamilton as a family, I always liked living closer, kind of towards Niagara Falls. I just didn't want to be closer to Toronto. I mean, they were our rivals, and Doug lived in Mississauga, so I didn't want to go that way. I knew that. So we went closer to Niagara, and there's some Stony Creek was great. You know, we loved living there, made great friends. But the best piece of advice I would give Jake is don't go up there and think, oh, I was in the NFL and now I'm in the CFL. I'm going to light it up. All I got to do is show up and play. I mean, it's every bit of talent is up in Canada that is in the NFL. I mean, not across the board, obviously. The NFL top 10% are some of the most amazing players you'll ever play against. But for the most part, you know, a good football player is a good football player, CFL, NFL. And if you go in, I've seen so many people end up in Canada and go in thinking, I'm so much better than these guys. I'm just going to go out there and do my thing. And they're there for a few weeks and you never see them again.
Yeah.
I mean, big name guys, you know, that have done well in the NFL. So go in and he's got to work his ass off. He's got to get better. Think about making the team and then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last one that I got for you here, Darren, is the last time the Ticats won the Grey Cup, there was a Boston College receiver who was a CFL All-Star. Can you see that happening again soon?
I sure hope so. With Coach Orlando Steinhauer, I would just love that. I was talking to Orlando, and I'm definitely coming up because I think Orlando is getting put up on the Wall of Honor.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what Hamilton calls that, but
he's going into the actual Canadian Football Hall of Fame too.
Oh, it's perfect. He's so deserving. In those conversations, I said I always got better when I was up in Canada because I practiced against these great defensive backs. Orlando, obviously, but Gerald Vaughan was the other one in Hamilton. And when I was in British Columbia, I think it was Barry Wilburn and Les Brown.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you practice every day against people like that, you get better.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, I looked it up here. Stephen Dunbar Jr. has number 82, but I'm sure he'd be willing to let go of it for a price when Jake shows up. He's got that NFL signing bonus practice roster money, right? He should be able to pull it off.
Yeah, he's rolling in it, so he can do whatever he wants. I think Jake's 85 out of BC. I forget his number, but I think he was 85. So hopefully they have that available for him.
Yeah, it's a fantastic connection. Darren, thank you so much for the time. It's great to catch up with, and we're looking forward to seeing you up here in Hamilton soon, okay?
Thanks, Marshall. Me too.
For those tough wake-ups,
John drank a beer and then crushed it off the side of his helmet. This was a damn Canada Heritage moment.
it's Marsh and Mello.
I've been talking about it for probably 5 years now, and I finally pulled the trigger. Saw that beer, chugged it, and crushed it over my head, and that was about it.
Welcome back. It is Marsh and Mello right here on Canadian Football Perspective. Thanks for being with us as always. Hope you enjoyed the conversation with Darren Flutie. He is an interesting guy. I had no idea how thick his Boston accent was until I started actually talking to him. Like, whoa, this thing is layered on. And he lives in and around the Boston area still, as he said. And I asked him, Kyle, about the coaching aspect of things because he was talking about Jake Burt and he was breaking him down. I'm like, would you ever want to coach? You know, you feel like somebody who has great knowledge of the game and you really he has this passion for the CFL. And he said, I've seen that coaching life. It's not for me. He just he does not feel like that's something he wants to do at all going forward. I can't blame him when you see the amount of work that goes into how this stuff gets created that we all just take for granted on game day. Yeah, I mean, that's tough to be able to cultivate that day after day after day. But I sent Darren a note as well with the article that I wrote on CFL.ca about him and Jake Burt. And he responded to me, "Hi, Marshall, thanks. I'm hesitant to open and read anything about myself, but I will check it out soon." And then he sent me an email back a couple of hours ago that said, "Marshall, just read it. Great article. Thank you very much for portraying myself and Jake in such a positive light. Always nice to have something kind and positive written about you. I do appreciate it. Looking forward to being up in Hamilton in August or September. I want to be there to support and recognize Orlando's achievements going into the Hall of Fame. I reminded Orlando that I had no option but to get better or fade away in Hamilton and British Columbia, especially. I was practicing every day against Orlando and Gerald Vaughan. quote, he says in brackets, I took the attitude that running scout team was an opportunity to get better versus our starting defensive backs. You can't pass up on a chance to get better ever, especially at the pro level. In BC, I ran routes against Les Brown, Barry Wilburn, and John Jefferson. If you're not at your best, those guys will embarrass a receiver. Then it's on film for all to see forever. That's never a good thing. Thanks again for the article, and all the best, Darren Flutie. So super, super, super nice guy. Glad I was able to make the connection with him, and we are one step closer to having Thanksgiving at the Fluties, which is great. So
Is Doug working that weekend doing Notre Dame football? That's what I want to know.
I'm not sure. Maybe Doug gets us in. Maybe we go watch ND against somebody big. Maybe a little one-off trip down there, see the Fighting Irish. No, he could not have been nicer before and afterwards. No, it was really funny about Darren, and this is the behind-the-scenes stuff that I love. We have the room to stretch our legs and tell people about here on the podcast network at CFP. Is that I finished doing the interview with Darren. I said, I don't want to keep you anymore. He had a long day at work, all the rest. And so I said, thank you for your time. And then I full transparency, I ran upstairs. It was bath time for Noah, my little son. So I go upstairs to give Noah a bath, and my phone starts ding, 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 ding. And it's Darren texting me. And Darren is saying, man, I just talking to you just got the juices flowing. I forgot how much I missed the CFL and how much I love the game, and I can't wait to make it up there and just soak up the CFL again. And he said, I'm not even going to tell people I'm there. I just want to go buy a ticket, sit in the stands by myself, just have a ball cap on, and I might even go up by myself, not even bring my kids or my wife, or I just want to watch the game in person. I'm like, man, this dude misses it. And that's the funny thing, Kyle, because when I asked you the question of what does Darren Flutie, what does his name mean to you? What do you think of? A lot of people would say, well, small white slot back or 98, 99 Ticats teams or whatever. But when you hear the way that he talks and you get those texts from him, you realize this dude loves the CFL, still vehemently supports the CFL. And he was actually really upset when I was talking to him after the interview was done that he has not been up for the reunions, right? Like the 99 Grey Cup reunion, that was the 20-year anniversary that they honored the team. And I remember having, people like Morreale running down to the field to be part of that ceremony, and a bunch of guys.
I think it was 38 guys or something, 39 guys that came to that reunion.
And like Hitchcock comes out of the tunnel with the Grey Cup and one hand fist.
He got honored that night too, right?
Right. Yeah. He went on the Wall of Honor, I believe. So it was a really, really cool night. And it never struck me that Darren Flutie wasn't there. And when I was working out the other day in the gym, I threw on the 98 Grey Cup in Winnipeg. It was Hamilton, obviously, against Calgary. And it's amazing watching the introductions of that Grey Cup, because the first thing that jumped out to me is Orlando Steinauer. If you ever wondered whether or not he was going to make a great head coach, watch the player introductions with Steve Armitage of CBC Sports narrating them to the stadium, because Orlando Steinauer is the first person waiting for the players that are being introduced. And he has like a secret handshake and a chest bump for every single person that comes out from the offense. To be a young defensive back, because keep in mind, O came in the league in like 96-ish, right? And he ends up making his way to Hamilton a couple of years later after bouncing around like Ottawa and whatnot, and gets taken in the dispersal draft and leads the league in interceptions. And then 98, 99, he's a stud. And he's a stud, but he's also the dude who's out there fist bumping and everything and chest bumping everybody and celebrating and getting everybody fired up. And then you see the actual player introductions. And it's out of McMaster University, number 18, the Canadian Player of the Year, Mike Morreale. And
McMaster University at slot back, the CFL's Outstanding Canadian Award winner, number 18, Mike Morreale.
Morreale, is wearing a ball cap and he's bouncing around. He starts fist pumping and pumping up the crowd, going. He's got all this flexing and everything else. Like, he's just brash Mike Morreale in the late 90s doing his thing. He's a stud and he knows it. And then it's like from the Sault Ste. Marie Tigers, or I forget what it was, but Andrew Grigg, and he runs out and you're like, man, junior football makes an appearance here for the starting receivers for the Ticats. Yeah. That's amazing. And then it's out of Boston College, number 82, Darren Flutie. No smile, doesn't pop up the crowd, doesn't flex, just jogs out, gives a high five to Orlando Steinauer, and makes his way into the huddle of all the Ticats. I'm like, the difference in personality between like Morreale and Flutie being on that team in that group, he loved the role that he had on those teams, 98, 99. And you can tell how much he misses it. And I'm excited to get him up to Hamilton at a game, talk to him. Maybe we'll do a podcast with him in person or something like that to relive some of those kind of best times in Hamilton. But he's genuinely excited to come and be a part of it all again. And I hope that Ticats fans find a way, if possible, if they're in the stands, whatnot. Hopefully it's late enough in the season and enough people are fully vaccinated that they can actually appreciate Darren Flutie and do an autograph signing or I don't know, something. I don't know if he wants to do that stuff, but it'd be really cool to make him feel appreciated all over again because he misses this city and this team.